Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Search Podcast. I'm Elliot Manning. I am joined by a very, let's just say, a very close guest of ours today, based over in the States. Her name is Amy. She's the VP for ConSol Partners in the USA. But Amy, if you would like to take over and introduce yourself in a bit more detail.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for having me on, Elliot, today. You're actually popping my podcast cherry, so thank you very much for being the one. Yes, I work as the Vice President for ConSol Partners in the US. Essentially, I do everything except for sales, so internal hiring, training, delivery, marketing, operations, the whole caboodle outside of sales.
Is that, tell us, like, we'll go into it. Is that all of your background outside of sales, inside sales, dealing with everything else, you know, across the board? Tell us your story.
Yeah, so actually, I'll answer this in two parts, if that's okay, because I actually think I've got well, I'll let you be the judge whether it's interesting, but I think it's an interesting story about my sort of journey in recruitment. It's a little bit serendipitous, really. So I'll go back to, when I was young Amy, I'd always said that I wanted to live in America. I always had this big American dream. Yeah. And I used to talk to my parents and say, how am I going to get to America? I really want to be in America. And I went off to college, did a law degree, finished my law degree, became an air hostess, as you do after doing a law degree. And after a certain amount of years, I was thinking, what am I going to do in my life? I'm kind of at this crossroads now. I'm approaching 30. I've been in the airline for a while. And a friend of mine said, I'm going to go out to Australia for a gap year and, just find myself again. I thought, that sounds great. I'll do that too. A couple of weeks before we were due to go out to Australia, she dropped out. So suddenly I was on my way to Australia on my own and actually fell into something called recruiting while I was out there. There's quite a big market for it in Australia, particularly Brits. So I started at Hayes Recruiting. And actually, one of the reasons I got the job was that I had a law degree and they needed somebody on their legal desk to do legal recruiting. So worked very well, stayed there for a while, and then ultimately made the decision to come back to the UK, where I kind of continued in this path of recruiting. Bit like everybody, never really had a plan to go into recruiting, didn't really know what it was until I fell into it. And after a few years in the UK, I suddenly had this light bulb moment where I thought, if they sponsor people in Australia, I wonder if they sponsor people in America. And so I Googled jobs in America and found, someone who was advertising a bunch of jobs in America. So fast forward and I land in Dallas in another recruiting opportunity in Dallas. And actually going back a few steps, when I was saying I wanted to be in America, I used to say I wanted to live in Hollywood and marry a movie director. And so when I'm in Dallas, it wasn't the Los Angeles that I was initially looking for, but I met a guy who happened to be from Los Angeles, who was in the movie industry or, acting industry, not a movie director, but in the industry. And fast forward a number of steps, and here I am in Los Angeles, where I said I wanted to be, married to somebody in the sort of arts, I guess you'd say. And it feels like it's come a complete circle from, what I was saying when I was a teenager to here I am now.
Do you think this just happened? It just kind of, fell into this place of your dream? Did you make it happen? Do you, what do you say? I mean, because a lot of people say, like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Yes. Did you make this happen? Did you follow the dream because you wanted to and, put yourself in that position?
Yeah, it's a good question because I'm a very firm believer of the law of attraction. If you put it out there and you say, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to get there, whether you subconsciously or subconsciously make your way there, I'm not sure, but I do believe in, you make things happen for yourself. And I'd said ever since I can remember, I was going to live in America and I was going to live in Los Angeles. And it might have taken me a number of years, but you do get there. So I'm a very firm believer in making things happen and making things happen for yourself. So I like to think that.
You've definitely done that. That's incredible. Like, you've gone to many different places and you got exactly what you wanted and where you wanted and how you wanted it. So fair play to you. Question in terms of like where you are now and what you're doing. Do you, and I've got to ask this if you don't mind, do you miss the sales of recruitment, like being hands-on?
I occasionally am hands-on in the recruiting space, occasionally, but my role is I wear so many different hats that just time-wise, I just physically can't do that anymore.
Sure.
I do absolutely miss I sometimes, I get a little bit envious when someone's ringing the gong for a deal and writing up a deal and that close. I still miss things like that. But my roles evolved so much that, I'm happy for other people doing that now and helping other people with success. But sort of answering the question, backing up a little bit, and when you said, about my role and what I do now, yes, I've kind of dipped my hands into every single aspect, because ultimately I do want to be a CEO one day of a recruitment business. And I think it's important that you are able to be an all-rounder. So I've been in recruiting, I've been in the sales, I've been in management, operations, marketing, training, hiring. So I think that's given me a really sort of well-rounded resume, if you like, to hopefully one day progress into that area. So I've not just stuck in one thing, but additionally, I think this is one of the things that, pieces of advice I would give to people is make things happen for yourself. Put your hands up to learn a new skill. Don't feel that you just have to stay in this cookie cutter, I find that difficult to say, in this little mold that people just expect you just keep progressing in the area that you specialize in currently. I've put my hand up and asked to learn more about different areas. And I think that's one of the key pieces of advice for anybody, whether that's a female in management or anybody, put your hand up and learn a new skill, find out more about a different area that maybe you don't know about at the moment.
You kind of answered the question for me, but I do want to go into it a little bit more. So you set out a plan and have an aspiration to become a CEO, or, so great, what you want there. But at what point how did it come around? Like, at what point did you think, do you know what, I need to do this kind of role to get that? Who taught you that's the path that you needed to take? Because I'm going to be upfront with you, like, after having been in this game for quite a long time, especially with talk to many people in recruitment companies, it's very rare that you see someone with that kind of ambition that has decided that, do you know what, I'm going to step back from recruiting and I want to learn everything else, which is I'm going to be honest, is more of the right way to do it. I'm going to learn everything else about the business from an operational perspective. I want to be let's just say a go-to person around the business across the board, so that I learn all the skills required to run a business and be a CEO. But how did that decision come around for you?
I think it's a mixture of things, first of all. I think at the beginning of my career, I was pushed forward quite quickly based on success and results, and was given opportunities to very quickly move into account management, team leadership, etc. So one, I was kind of set on that path very early on. Number two, I'm sort of naturally like that. I'm naturally someone that likes to be responsible for things. That's how you get the best out of me, is just pile on the workload and you'll get the best results from me. I think thirdly, yes, it's a case of make it happen. And I actually have to give credit to a couple of managers I've worked with in the past. A gentleman called Matt Evolt that I used to work with at Gattaca, Janice Marks, who I used to work with in the UK, and Brian, and Mark as well from ConSol. A lot of them have been very heavy in talking about self-development. And I remember there being a lot of talk about self-development, particularly from Matt, where he said, if you want to get far, you have to take accountability for yourself and your own development and not wait for others to make it happen. And I think by that, I did a lot of investment in things like working on communication skills, doing lots of management training, and doing lots of relationship building training, whatever books I could read, I did, because I knew that I wanted to be further down the line, in a position where I'm responsible for a business. And so I knew that there would be steps that I would have to do in order to get there, and sort of started that train quite early on of developing myself and taking accountability for my own journey. I've been very, very lucky to work with fantastic managers along the way who have not only encouraged this, but helped me with, look, you could do with finding out, working a bit more on budgets and P&Ls, let me show you the way. And I think that's because I've always been very upfront and honest with where I want to go and what I want to be. And people have sort of encouraged that along the way, which has been wonderful, and not try to prohibit that, and have seen me as someone who, you know, will flourish with more responsibility and insights into the business, etc. And obviously the business gets the benefit of that, but I also get the benefit of learning more. So yeah, it goes back to that whole make it happen, I think is really the key there.
So on this, you know, on this subject, how do you feel about that responsibility? How does it make you feel? I mean, and we've gone through, which is, you know, which I thank you for, you know, in terms of how to make things happen for yourself and taking accountability. And I completely agree with you. I've done exactly the same with my business. No one's there to show me or teach me. You know, it's all about either learning the hard way or doing it yourself, right? So I completely agree with you there. But how does that responsibility make you feel now that you're in that position or going in that direction? What's it done for you?
I think it broadens your entire life and perspective around life, because you can utilize skills that you learn in business in other areas of your life as well. So, for example, going back to things like self-development and communication, you know, doing things like, you know, DISC assessments and things like that, you figure out more about yourself. And not only is that useful in the business sense and how you're communicating and working with people, but additionally, you can use that in home life, how you're communicating with your other half, how you're communicating with friends and family. And that's just one example, is communication. But I think the more you can develop yourself, both professionally and personally, will benefit the other side. So professional development is going to benefit you personally, and same vice versa. So I think the more, personally for me, the more responsibility I have, the more I feel like I'm developing as an all-round human being as well.
Yeah, definitely. Fine. On to today. How's the past year been for you?
Different.
Yes.
I think is different, challenging, rewarding. I think this is a year that a lot of people will remember as being a struggle and a challenge, but yet there's been a lot of big billers for us this year who can obviously take that away as saying, actually, this was one of my best years ever in business. And I think it falls down to making of it the best that you can, and not using, well, it's COVID, no one's hiring, as, you know, potentially an excuse. You know, go out there and keep doing what you've always done, keep building those relationships. I think this year's also been the year to recognize that if you're good at building rapport and relationships with people, that's really going to help you, you know, with people that aren't hiring as much as they were hiring previously. I think this has been a bit of an eye-opener year for a lot of people. But ultimately, you know, as I say, ConSol's been very successful this year. Almost, I wouldn't go quite as far to say as business as usual, but almost that element. And I think it's really helped a few people, you know, practice and sharpen sales skills, recruiting skills, and having to be, you know, just a little bit more than they would be in any other given year.
What have you personally, you know, in talking just from yourself, have found really difficult about the last, you know, 12 months and moving forward? You know, what have you seen as the biggest challenge for you as an individual?
As an individual, it's going to be internal hiring.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is not that there's any reason why people wouldn't want to join ConSol, for example. It's more what the market's doing. I think because, you know, a lot of people that have been in business development have found it tougher this year. We've seen a lot of people swing from being in business development to wanting to go into the corporate side of recruiting, where, you know, you're working in-house for a corporate business and not having to do that business development side. We've also seen a lot of people that have a business development background that want to go into just the candidate side of recruiting because maybe they've struggled a little bit or seen that it's been a bit harder for them. So there's been a lot of differences in the market. Plus, we've seen people leaving, you know, certain areas, like, for example, California. You know, there's lots of people that, not just internal wise, but, you know, candidates in general, leaving California and going to other states. So there's been lots of things that you probably wouldn't have anticipated this year. Plus, people maybe have been a little bit trepid about, you know, moving from one company to another company during a pandemic and not knowing what's going to happen. And, you know, you're hearing in the market layoffs from certain companies. So, you know, I think all of those things in whole have been challenging for businesses to grow, not just ourselves, but other businesses as a whole. So that would definitely be something I would say personally for me has been a challenge.
Fine. So we're now in 2021, new year. Supposed to be a fresh start, which we were saying on the beginning before we recorded this, that we're still in the mix of it all, and it's not changed too much. But it is what it is. We move forward. What's the plan for you and the internal hiring and the business over in, I suppose more from a stateside, which is what you predominantly look after?
Sure. I think the difference coming into this year is people are now starting to adapt to the new normal. Whereas, when you roll back to March of last year, it was all new. No one really had heard of this pandemic before. And, people maybe panicked a little bit or weren't sure what to make of things. Now we're entering a phase where, we're able to go on with life as the new normal now, where people have evolved, adapted to the situation. So some of those challenges, I think, will be wiped away with the fact that this is just the new normal now. We've also been able to onboard people remotely, do all the inductions and training, get people successful remotely in a remote capacity. So it's something that we as a business as well have been able to adapt to successfully. So for 2021, it's actually a very, very exciting time for ConSol. One, we're going to be doing a lot of continued growth, both in our Los Angeles office as well as our Austin office. And we also have plans to expand into Philadelphia as well. So we'll be opening a third office. So lots of growth plans there. One of the big growth areas for us will be our Austin office. We're building our contract practice from Austin. Previously, ConSol has always been in the States very perm heavy. We've been very much focused on the perm area. We've been in hotbed markets that have notoriously lent to perm hiring, like autonomous driving, artificial intelligence. You don't usually get contractors in that space. Whereas one of the areas of growth for us is going to be our contract practice in Austin, which will be wider IT as well as niche technology. So still sticking with the ConSol mold, but building that out as well. So we'll be hiring, that will be a split desk model. So you'll either be on the sales side or the recruiting side, rather than the 360 that we have with the perm team. So that'll be some hiring. But not only that, we've actually got a lot of new benefits and things like that we've rolled in for 2021. And I think this is part of a lot of this has come from the acquisition. I'm not sure if you're aware, ConSol was acquired at the back end of 2019 by an investment company called Empresaria Group. They're a huge company, only about 22 businesses across the globe. And what that's led to us having is a lot of financial investment as well as being able to work as a small boutique sized company and have that culture. With that, we've got a great CEO who I know you know, Brian Van Aken, who's got 30 years recruiting experience in the US, a lot of that in the contract area. So he's been very prominent focusing on the contract space. What he's also done is we've added a lot more benefits. So we've now got some new tenure benefits, which we rolled out literally a week ago, January. Which every year you're with the business, you'll get more PTO, you'll get more benefits, you'll get various different things at each step of the way. We've also got lots more incentives going on. So not only, we've got an excellent commission structure. We pay up to 40%. It's one of the market best commission structures. But not only that, we're now paying out thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in additional bonuses for hitting milestone billing targets, new business, new clients. We've got incentives around retainers being sold. We've got lots of other incentives and bonuses and benefits, as well as that awesome commission structure. So really, if you're an individual contributor and you're a biller and you're confident in your billing ability, you will by far eclipse any earning potential that you could at any other business based on the bonuses and incentives, as well as the commission we now have in place. So it's a good time to be with us. For sure.
No, it definitely sounds like it. And for those that are listening in or, see this podcast, please feel free to reach out to Amy and go through anything. I think she's pretty much just sold you the opportunity regardless. And there's a lot to offer with a business like ConSol Partners. We've worked with them for many years. I actually interviewed with a ConSol Partners about 10, 15 years ago in London, funny enough. So I know the business well. They've grown from strength to strength and they've got a lot to I suppose, to do now over the next few years with their growth plans, which having spoken to Brian and now yourself, there's a lot there. Amy, really, really appreciate you being on this podcast with me. I've learned a hell of a lot about you and your journey and what you're aiming to achieve in the business. And, you know, it's fantastic to see a company, you know, like ConSol that has allowed and opened up their, you know, I suppose their business to people to progress and develop in different areas, which again, as I said before, you don't see very often. If you're a recruiter and you want to be able to develop and I suppose learn more about the business, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to try and put yourself in that position. I feel like if a good biller in a business asks their boss to progress in other areas like that, they're scared they're going to lose their job or the boss is going to have a go at them, and it doesn't seem to go down very well usually. But ConSol Partners, obviously, clearly a different story. You're going upwards and upwards, you know, in the business, which is fantastic. And there's so much more happening. As I mentioned, if anyone's got anything they want to go through, I'll point you in the right direction. Amy, all your details will be on the podcast itself so people know who you are and where you are. But is there any other final, I suppose, tips or advice for someone? And if we can base it around that, follow your dream point that you made earlier and trying to get to what you want, which I'll be honest with you, I've not had anyone on any of these podcasts really touch on as much as you and show, I suppose, the proof of it as well.
Yeah, I do have some good tips for people actually, and I guess I'd separate that by people newer into recruitment versus experienced in recruitment. Yeah. I think that the overall in arch would be, if you want some, you know, put your head above the water, put your hands up for things, make it known where you want to go, and try and always make sure you're moving yourself forward and be accountable for your own career. Don't put it in the hands of someone else and wait for them to offer something to you. But new people into recruitment, ask questions. Embrace what I call the rites of passage. To be a good recruiter, you'll be aware of this, Elliot. To be a good recruiter, you have to go through the dangerous path of dropouts, ghosting, getting information wrong, you know, all the things that happen. But that's the rites of passage where, you know, you're then able to be an experienced recruiter. So embrace that, ask people, utilize others' experience. Don't be afraid of asking for help. If you're an experienced person, I would say be dedicated to your craft. Make sure you're always moving forward with what you want personally and professionally, and don't be afraid to open your eyes to where you may need to still develop areas. And you know, use that as something to keep yourself moving forward, not as you know, as a criticism.
Amazing. I've just made a note of that, the rites of passage in recruitment. Can you imagine if I asked any recruiter what they all are? The list would be absolutely endless, but everyone's gone through, I suppose, bits of everything, depending on how long they've been in the game for. But if you can go through all of that, as you said, then, you know, that's the only way you're going to learn. Exactly. As I said, you got to learn the hard way, right? Amy, again, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And look, we'll definitely be in contact. And as I said, anyone is listening and that wants to get in touch with you can do directly. But thanks again. And hopefully we'll speak very soon.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you giving us the platform to speak, and I've enjoyed the conversation. So thank you, Elliot, for speaking.
Likewise. I'll talk to you soon, Amy. Thank you very much.
All right, fine.